So first of all, thanks a lot for inviting IFAD to present the Rural Development Report of 2019, which is on creating opportunity for rural youth. And with the picture of our beautiful report, I'm also happy that 4 of the 7 members of this panel are women, because the future, at least the future of agriculture, I hope, belongs to everybody, but also to women. I'm not the direct coordinator of the Rural Development Report, and I need to acknowledge the work of our Associate Vice President, Paul Winters, together with Aslian Arslan from RIA, Research and Impact Assessment Division, and Costanza Dinucci, who have conducted this huge work of putting together 21 research papers that are the background papers for writing this report. And I think that the work was huge, with the collaboration of many policy advisor and applied research academics. And so I hope that you will like the content and the main key message of our report. This is the most difficult session of, in general, those conference. It's early afternoon, after lunch, after 2 days of huge work. I hope to wake you up. So why youth? Because youth is a specific stage in human life. It's a critical moment, and it signs the transition from dependence to independence. It's also a time marked by critical decision when youth, which for us are defined individuals between 15 and 24 years old, make their own decision, and they should be also empowered of possibility to make those decisions. What does it mean, investing in youth? Investing in youth means investing in the possibility to change the future generation. Why rural youth? Especially because we are in Asia. Rural youth because 80% of the youth aged between 15 and 24, and this is important because this is the cohort we're looking at. They live in developing countries, not only in developing countries, but most of them in rural areas. Where are them located? Most of them today are located in Asia and also in sub-Saharan Africa. However, the projection for the future, it is foreseen that by 2050, the percentage of youth located in rural area will more than double in sub-Saharan Africa, while stays the same or declining in Asia. Therefore, we need to analyze and identify policies that are able to help in different contexts the youth population. This map represents an equal area cartogram. It is also called a density equalizing map. What it does, it simply reflects the percentage of youth compared to the global share. So what you see today is that the large majority of the youth are in Asia. But if you look at what happened in 30 years from now, the percentage of youth in Africa will increase tremendously. Therefore, policies that will have to target rural youth should look at the context, the area, the countries where they are located. Youth are central for rural development, and they are the foundation for the success that they have to be built. For a successful transition, young people need to become productive, connected, and empowered for their own future. So there are 3 building blocks that constitute the foundation for analyzing policies for youth. What does it mean, productive? Why youth have to be productive? Productive is not only anymore output per hectare. Productivity is proxied by other factors. It is computed in relation to the quality of environment, the level of people's skills and learning. But learning is not schooling anymore. The World Development Report of the World Bank from 2018 has really pointed on the need of job and non-cognitive skills are even more important than technical skills. Therefore, investing of non-cognitive abilities for rural youth is of fundamental importance. What does it mean, connected? Connected to market, to service, to ideas and information. Being connected creates new opportunities for rural youth, and this is also the second building block on which we create our policies. empowered of their own future, power to make decisions for their own best and interest. Empowering doesn't mean only giving the right, it's also the possibility of exercise the right. Think of land market, where the problem is not only, which is the main constraints in rural area, the possibility to have a right over land, but it's also the possibility to exercise this right. So what are the three dimensions that we're looking at to analyze rural youth? We look, first of all, at the macroeconomic context by putting together information at from the macroeconomic context, which is the national setting that basically create the structural and the rural transformation where youth live. Then we look at the rural opportunity space, and then at the household characteristic, so basically the household characteristic where youth live. If you put together on a graph on the y and x axis, where the y-axis is the level of structural transformation, therefore the share of non-agricultural activities in total GDP, and the x-axis is the agricultural value added per worker, so it's agricultural productivity. So if you look at those two macroeconomic indicators, you can divide all the countries and place countries in 4 quadrants, with low and high level of structure and rural transformation. Based on the characteristic of those countries, specific policies will be suggested to invest in rural youth. In particular, you can look at 2 quadrants, which is the upper right and the lower left, the high level of rural and structural transformation, and the low level of rural and structural rural transformation. What does it mean, high and low? High are countries which are located in areas with high level of both structural and rural transformation. Here, the agricultural opportunities are tremendous. However, this is also the region where the share of rural youth is the lowest. Therefore, you have to identify what's the best policy over there. And the best policy over there, given that the number is low, is that the policies should be specific and inclusive for specific target to youth. On the opposite, if you look at the quadrant on the lower left, low level of structural and rural transformation. This is the area where the majority of fragile state and conflict area are located, and it's also the place where the largest majority of youth reside. When you have many people and you have many problems, what you have to do is to embed rural development youth policies into a broader level of rural development policies, because the challenge are more structure and rural transformation. Then you can look at the rural opportunity space. How do you move from the macroeconomic setting to the rural opportunity space? You look at the household level characteristic. We have performed these graphs using household level data from 13 countries in the 3 regions of interest. And what you have on the left side, on the y-axis, the level of commercialization potential, and on the right side is the agriculture potential. Is the microeconomic reflect of the previous slide? So if you look, for example, at countries that are located with level of high agriculture potential, at the same time you have high agriculture potential, but if you are located in an area of high commercialization potential, basically, youth that are in these countries have diverse and potentially remunerative opportunities to invest in agriculture. While if you are in countries with medium and low commercialization potential, but with high agriculture potential, there are, yes, high agriculture potential, but also strong limited market access. So you have to invest in increasing and strengthening access to market in order to be able to invest in rural youth. This is another level of analysis, and if you look at more in particular the household characteristic of the family where rural youth belong to. And basically this is again the mirror of the previous slide. You can distinguish 4 types of rural household: transitioning rural household, diversified rural household, specialized farm household, and subsistence farm households. The same constraints that you have on the lower left, low, structural and rural transformation, you have it here for youth and households who belongs to the subsistence farm households. And in fact, you have that the large majority of rural youth live either in transitioning household or fully transformed non-farm household. For those youth, different type of policies will be recommended. Again, here you have the large majority of youth who are in the transitioning rural household who are engaged in off-farm opportunities. So, what are the the constraints that rural households, rural youth face? They really face 4 types of constraints: capacities and skills, access to market, access to land, and gender north. They lack the right cognitive and non-cognitive skills. So what does it mean invest in youth? It means invest in those specific non-cognitive abilities that are fundamental in an era of change, in an era of structure and digital transformation of the agriculture, to be able to be productive in rural context. Access to finance. Youth, even if finance is a constraint in rural area, access to finance for youth is even more a constraint in rural areas. Therefore, policies to allow youth not only to access to finance, but also to access to land are of fundamental importance. Gender. Women face a triple challenge. They're women, they're female, they're young, and they live in rural areas. And then they also face social norms. These really create a challenge to identify policies to empower them. And all these constraints are embedded in a broader context where the challenge is a high demographic change, the challenge of the climate change and the resilience to adverse conditions, and also the digital revolution that create and strengthen the divide between rural and urban population, and the more so with rural youth. So, rural youth, they need cognitive and non-cognitive skills. Vocational training alone, which used to be the policies that was financed in the past, is not sufficient anymore. Non-cognitive skills are equally, if not more important than cognitive abilities. Partnering with the private sector is fundamental in an era where public funding is tremendously decreasing, and also support to agriculture from the international community. So continuous support is needed to incubate ideas and so to finance startups. Rural youth need to be empowered and participate in the decision-making process. Therefore, they have to participate. You need intervention, non-responding to their needs, and increase the ownership, enhance the agency capacity. So what are our main message from the report? We have 3 main messages. Investing in rural youth requires to think differently and out of the box. First, rural development policies and investment should be embedded in broader rural development strategies. If you are located in a quadrant which is low, and you have many rural youth, but you have strong challenge in terms, for example, of market access, because you need to increase access to market. If you promote specific policies for rural youth, you will not be as successful as you integrate those policies into a broader rural development policies. An effective approach to rural youth policy and investment is one that strikes the right balance between creating rural opportunities and fostering specific ones. Therefore, policies and investment to foster rural transformation, which is inclusive of youth and youth-centered, need to consider 3 foundations for development, which are the 3 building blocks that I mentioned at the beginning: productive, empowered, and connected to the world. So this is what we like to present as our last 2 slides. Those last 2 slides summarize the main message. And the main message is that there is not a unique policy. The policy depends on the country and on the level of agriculture development of the country and the share of rural youth within those countries. So if you have low level of rural opportunity, this requires focusing on youth inclusion in the rural transformation policies policies and investment. So it means that you have to find this right balance of policies, and you have to you need to invest in broader rural development policies. On the opposite, if you are in high level of rural opportunity, requires focusing on new specific policies. Why? Because you already reach a high level of both agriculture and structural transformation. You have few youth which are in agriculture sector because they move out from agriculture. So those policies should be more targeted to youth. Designing youth strategies appropriate for countries and their rural space. So in the least transformed countries, in countries with low level of structural transformation, you need policies and investment priorities that are similar, that are central for addressing the problem of lack of agency. On the contrary, in countries with high level of structural transformation, but limited extent of rural transformation, you need more specific youth intervention. This is a simple message because basically those are two messages, but they're important because they're consistent across countries and based on the level of their agriculture and rural development. Thank you for your attention.